I've seen a lot in my 22 years on the force. Murders that didn't make sense, families torn apart, the kind of things that stay behind your eyes long after the crime scene tape comes down. But nothing ever stayed with me like the Hollow Point case. It began on an unremarkable morning in October 2014 in the kind of town people call safe, Hollow Point, Pennsylvania. Population just under 4,000, a place where the loudest sound most nights is the train whistle that passes by at 3 a.m. When the call came in, it was listed as a welfare check. A neighbor hadn't seen her friend, Erin Walters, in 4 days. No big deal, we thought. Maybe she'd gone out of town. Maybe her phone was dead. We were wrong. Erin lived in a small 2-story house on the edge of town. Pale yellow paint, chipped shutters, porch swing still swaying in the wind when we got there. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind. Like the air itself was holding its breath. We knocked. No answer. Knocked again. That's when I noticed the front door was slightly ajar. My partner, Detective Ruiz, nudged it open. "Miss Walters?" "This is Hollow Point PD." No response. We stepped inside. The smell hit us first, sweet and rotten, the unmistakable scent of something dead. Flies hovered near the kitchen doorway. In the living room, everything looked normal. A mug half full of coffee. A book open on the armrest. The kind of small domestic details that make crime scenes feel wrong. Then we saw the staircase. At the top, a dark trail, something thick. Dried. Blood. The entire upstairs felt colder. Windows were shut, curtains drawn tight. Erin Walters was found on her bed. Or rather, what was left of her. Her face was covered with a pillow. There were deep lacerations along her arms, defensive wounds. Her phone lay on the floor, screen shattered. But what really struck me wasn't the brutality. It was the arrangement. The pillow wasn't thrown or dropped. It was placed, perfectly centered. Her arms folded across her chest, almost ritualistic. And on the nightstand, a single Polaroid photograph of her, smiling. Taken, according to the timestamp, 2 hours before her death. We sent the photo to forensics. Old-school Polaroid, no digital trace. But the angle of the shot suggested someone close, standing just feet from her. Erin was a 29-year-old photographer herself, freelanced for weddings and small businesses. Her neighbors said she'd been withdrawn lately, stopped showing up at her usual diner, stopped answering calls. But one neighbor, Mrs. Grant, remembered something else. There was a man, she said, used to come by around dusk, drove a dark blue van. I thought it was a client or something. He always parked across the street and just watched the house. We canvassed the area. No security cameras caught the plate. Just glimpses the van passing through side streets, turning out toward Old Mill Road. When we pulled her phone records, one number kept appearing, no name, no contact photo. Just unknown. Dozens of calls, some only a few seconds long. The last call came at 1:14 a.m., the night she died. Every house tells a story if you listen long enough. Erin's told one I wish I'd never heard. 2 days after the body was removed, we went back for a follow-up search. I noticed a faint seam in the kitchen floor under the fridge. It wasn't on the blueprints. We moved the fridge aside. There was a hatch. The hinges were rusted, but with a little force it opened. A narrow staircase led down into the dark, and there in the basement we found a small photography studio, tripods, lighting rigs, backdrops, and a wall covered in Polaroids. Dozens of them, all of Erin, sleeping, eating, sitting at her desk. Photos clearly taken through her windows. The earliest ones dated back almost 8 months. That was the moment I realized we weren't dealing with a random act. Whoever did this had been studying her, living parallel to her life, observing, waiting, building an intimacy only he understood. We traced the photo paper. It was a discontinued brand, only sold at a small camera shop 40 miles away. The owner remembered one customer still buying them, a quiet man named Joseph Laird. Unemployed, lived alone outside of town. Owned, you guessed it, a blue van. We got a warrant. What we found in his house made even the crime scene at Erin's look tame. We arrived at the address just after dawn. A single-story home off Old County Road, the kind of place you'd miss if you blinked. No curtains, no mailbox. Just that same dark blue van, sitting like a carcass in the overgrown yard. Ruiz looked at me and said quietly, "If he's in there, this is going to get ugly." We went in slow. The smell was the same as Erin's house rot, dust and something metallic. Inside, the walls were lined with photographs, not framed, pinned, thousands of them. Some were landscapes, others people, strangers, all women. And then, one corner of the room caught my attention, a corkboard, covered entirely with photos of Erin Walters, each labeled with dates, times, and single-word notes. Smile, window, basement, mine. That word mine, it was written dozens of times, over and over. Like a mantra, we followed a trail of extension cords down a hallway to what looked like a locked pantry door. Ruiz kicked it open, behind it a dark, narrow tunnel. The tunnel wasn't on any blueprint. It led underground, connecting the house to a storm drain about 2 blocks away. He had built a passageway to move unseen, and inside that tunnel, we found something that froze the air in our lungs. A camera. Still recording. When we checked the footage, the timestamp read October 10th, 1:03 a.m., just 11 minutes before Erin's time of death. The video showed Erin's bedroom. The camera was outside her window. We watched her walk into frame, brush her hair, and then stop. She turned, looked directly at the camera. Not startled, not afraid, just resigned. Then she whispered something. We enhanced the audio later. She said, "I know you're there." And then the feed cut to black. We brought Joseph Laird in 3 days later, found him sleeping in an abandoned barn 15 miles from town. He didn't fight, didn't run, just said, "You finally found me." During interrogation, he was calm. Too calm. I asked him why. Why Erin? Why any of it? He said, "You wouldn't understand, detective. She saw me. Not through the window, she saw the real me." That's rare, he smiled when he said it. Like it was a love story. But then something else he said stuck with me. There are others, you know. The ones who see. She's not the first, just the one who didn't look away. We searched his property again. In a crawl space under the floorboards, we found more Polaroids, not of Erin this time, but of other women. Women from nearby towns, women reported missing years earlier, and in every photo, that same eerie familiarity. Like each victim had looked straight into the camera, like they knew. In my 22 years, I've seen monsters in all shapes, but Joseph wasn't like them. He wasn't angry, he wasn't impulsive, he was methodical, controlled. He kept meticulous notes on each victim, their habits, their fears, their breaking points, and the last page in his notebook was blank except for one sentence written in red ink. The detective is next. He'd been watching me too. The department kept me off the case after that. Conflict of interest, they said. But I couldn't let it go. I started noticing things. Lights flickering in my hallway at night. Footsteps in my driveway, but no one there. And one morning, a Polaroid slid under my front door. It was me, sleeping. Joseph Laird was held at Hollow Point County Jail pending trial, but 3 days before his court date, he vanished. The cameras caught nothing, no forced entry, no escape footage. One moment he was there. The next, his cell was empty. The only thing left behind was a single photograph on his cot. Of me, sitting at my desk, time-stamped, that same morning. I left the force a year later, told people I was done. But even now, I can't shake the feeling that I never really left Hollow Point behind. Every few months, I get an envelope in the mail. No return address, inside a new Polaroid, always the same message written on the back. You still see me. I moved 3 times, changed my number, even changed my name, but deep down, I know. He's still out there, watching, waiting, and sometimes, late at night, when the wind rattles the window, I think I can hear the faint click of a camera shutter. That's when I turn off the lights, because whatever he's looking for, I don't want to give him the perfect shot. I thought retiring would bring peace. I told myself that once I packed away the files, the nightmares would stop. But it doesn't work like that. A case like Hollow Point doesn't end when the evidence box closes. It lingers in the silence between thoughts, in the corners of every mirror. For a while, I tried to pretend I was free of it. I bought a small cabin upstate, near the edge of Lake Wendell, no neighbors for a mile, no streetlights, no camera shutters clicking in the dark. I told myself I needed quiet. What I really needed was distance from the photographs, from the smell of old film, from the way Erin Walters's eyes seemed to follow me even in sleep. I stopped watching the news, stopped answering calls from the department, but one thing I couldn't stop was the habit of noticing small things. A car parked too long on the shoulder, the glint of glass on a distant ridge, the faint hum of electricity when a camera's still warm from use. Old instincts die slower than hope. The first winter at the cabin was mercifully uneventful. I stacked wood, fed the stove, drank coffee strong enough to keep a corpse awake. The nights were longer than I remembered, the kind of long where you start measuring time by heartbeats instead of hours. Then spring came, and with it the letter. No return address, postmarked from Hollow Point. The envelope was clean, pressed flat, almost sterile. Inside was a single sheet of paper, blank except for one line typed neatly in the center. You left the light on. I stared at it for a long time, trying to decide if it was a joke, a mistake, or something worse. There were no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing that would hold up as evidence. But I hadn't told anyone that I left a lamp burning in my study every night. No one could have known unless they were close enough to see. I told myself it was paranoia. That was easier than believing Joseph Laird had found me again, easier than believing he'd never left. I burned the letter in the stove and went to bed. Sleep didn't come. 2 weeks later, another envelope arrived. No stamp this time, hand-delivered. Inside was a photograph, a Polaroid. It was my cabin, taken from the tree line. I was standing on the porch, coffee in hand, staring directly into the lens. The date scribbled underneath, yesterday. I remember dropping the photo, my hands shaking so badly the edges tore. I went outside, circled the property, checked the locks, the windows, every inch of dirt for footprints. Nothing. No tire tracks, no sign of anyone having been there. That's when I realized what terrified me most. It wasn't that he had found me. It was that he'd been here long enough to take the shot and leave without leaving a trace. I contacted the local sheriff, old friend of mine named Briggs. He sent a deputy to do a welfare check, humored me with talk about extra patrols. They found nothing, no van, no cameras, no sign of intrusion. Just the photograph I'd already shown them. Briggs said softly, "Maybe it's someone playing games, Aaron. Internet folks read about your case sometimes. You know how stories spread, maybe. But how would they know about the lamp? That part was never in the reports. Summer arrived heavy and wet, and I tried again to pretend it was over, until I found the second photograph. It was tucked under the windshield wiper of my truck one morning. Same Polaroid format. This time, it was a shot of the lake behind the cabin. Still water, my reflection in it. The handwriting on the bottom said, "Beautiful view, detective." I moved the next week, packed what little I owned into boxes and drove south until the road signs stopped feeling familiar. I rented a small apartment above a hardware store in a town that barely showed up on maps. No forwarding address, no listed number. For months, there was nothing. I started to believe the ghost had stayed behind at the lake. Then came the mirror. It was a cheap thing hung on the bathroom wall by the landlord. I'd seen it 100 times. But one morning, brushing my teeth, I noticed something faint etched into the glass near the bottom corner. Letters. A word, written so small you'd miss it unless the light hit just right. Smile. I smashed the mirror that night, swept the pieces into a box and took them to the dumpster. But in the reflection of one shard, for just a heartbeat, I thought I saw movement behind me. The shadow of a man raising a camera. I didn't look back. You learn, after years of chasing darkness, that fear doesn't live in what you see. It lives in what you think you might see. I kept telling myself that Laird was dead, that the prison transfer records, the coroner's report, everything confirmed it. But I also remember standing over his empty cell, the photograph of me on the cot, and the way the air felt warm, like someone had just been there. Sometimes I wonder if he ever existed at all, or if I built him out of the pieces of every monster I'd met. But then another letter arrives, always when I start to feel safe again. This last one came on the anniversary of Erin Walters' death. Plain envelope, inside a Polaroid. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was dark, grainy. Then I saw the outline of a man sitting at a desk. Stacks of papers around him, a lamp burning beside his arm. It was me, writing this report. On the back, in the same red ink he'd used years ago, were 3 words. You still see. I should have felt anger or fear. Instead, there was a strange calm, because in that moment, I realized the case was never about Erin Walters or the other women. It was about the watching, about making sure someone, somewhere, was always aware of him. That's the part people don't understand about men like Joseph Laird. They don't need to be seen by the world. They only need one pair of eyes to witness them, to make them real. And for him, that pair of eyes was mine. I keep the photo locked in a drawer now. Sometimes, late at night, I take it out. I stare at it until my reflection fades into his. And I wonder if he's still out there, camera in hand, waiting for the moment I forget to close the blinds. I moved again last winter, different name, different town, but the mail still finds me. A few days ago, another envelope arrived. No photo this time. Just a single strip of undeveloped film. I haven't decided whether to develop it. Part of me wants to know what's on it. The other part knows that's exactly what he wants. Because the moment I look, the moment I see the story starts again. So I keep it sealed in a drawer beside my bed. Every night, before turning off the light, I catch myself glancing toward the window, half expecting a flash of light, the soft click of a shutter. But the darkness outside stays still, for now. I tell myself that the Hollow Point case is over, that the monster was buried long ago. Then, somewhere in that thin space between waking and sleep, I hear a whisper, faint, close. You left the light on, and when I open my eyes, the lamp beside my bed is glowing, though I swear I turned it off. They teach you in the academy that every case can be solved if you just collect enough evidence. But they never tell you what to do when the evidence starts collecting you. When the case follows you home, breathes through your walls, watches through the glass. The Hollow Point file sits in the archives now, cold, closed. But sometimes new officers ask about it, why there are no crime scene photos in the official record. I tell them the truth, because the photographer kept them. Then I sign their request forms, nod politely, and go back to my coffee. And when I raise the cup to my lips, I catch my reflection in the window, a small round flash of light blooming across the glass, and I can't tell if it's the sun or the camera.